Hi, Facebook Live streaming people out there. They took me and they dunked my head in a bucket of warm coffee, not hot, so I'm still okay. Just to wake me up a little bit, and they said, please don't stutter anymore, so I'm going to try not to stutter. I'm Mike Novak, and I am hosting a series of interviews today. We're doing it all day long from the 2016 Chicago Food Tank Summit in Chicago. Hashtag Food Tank. You can write your comments or your questions, and we hope you join us in this conversation. But when this ends today in Chicago, never fear, there are going to be more food tank summits across the country next year, 2017, in DC, in Boston, in Los Angeles. Go to foodtank.com. If you go there right now, you will see the streaming of the panels that are going on in the big room beyond that wall. And hear rather interesting discussions. I assume Billy Burdett from Advocates for Urban Agriculture thinks so. We'll get to him in just a second. But I want to thank Organic Valley for sponsoring these live streaming interviews, the Backstage interviews as we call them. You can go to various sites on Facebook to see this. If you're watching at Food Tank, you can also go to my Facebook page, The Mike Novak Show. You can go to Natural Awakening Chicago. And if you want to participate on Twitter, at food_tank or at Mike Now, N-O-W. And I hope you join in the conversation. So let's talk to Billy. You were just with the panel called Farming the Future. Full disclosure, Billy and I know each other. We have engaged in urban farming activities, at least discussions about urban farming activities, and I'm a big fan of Advocates for Urban Agriculture because you're doing a lot of good stuff, and it's a broad range of things.
It is.
Isn't that what you find in the urban agricultural
Absolutely,
world?
yeah, broadening ever more. It just keeps on getting bigger. Both in size and also in the sort of scope of different types of projects that people are starting. So, you have everything from, small residential gardening, people growing in their backyards, on rooftops, on their back decks, if they get some sunlight, growing indoors even, closets, basements with growing lights, all the way through community gardens, school gardens, people growing for restaurants, full-fledged urban farms that are engaged in commercial activity.
Like Windy City Harvest, which not only does a farm but teaches people how to farm. That's the other thing. There's a lot of education going on in the city of Chicago regarding growing your own food, which, as we know, is going to become more and more important.
Yes. Absolutely.
And that takes us to something that you're very interested in when it was very important was World War II and the Victory Gardens. What's your connection? You have a connection to the Victory Garden movement.
Yeah, my great-grandfather, James Henderson Burdett, we share two names there. I'm William Henderson Burdett. He was actually a journalist originally, based in Chicago and northwestern Indiana. Near the Indiana dunes, and he was, an avid gardener, and just interested in that. Started working for some seed companies somewhere along the way, and when it was actually World War I that the Victory Garden movement first got started, and that was basically in reaction to rationing that was happening as a result of the war. Victory Gardens were seen as a way for people to grow produce that really there wasn't a whole lot of. And so he kind of brought all of his interests together as a journalist, as a seed guy, as a gardener, and helped grow this movement so that by the time World War II came around, and rationing was again, a very real and tangible reality for people. He was able to get a lot of support on the local level and even on the federal level to encourage people to start growing food in community gardens, in school gardens, in their backyards. He wrote the Victory Garden Manual, which you can...
the Victory Garden?
The Victory Garden Manual. I think it was published in 1942 or 43. And it basically, you know, was a how-to of how to grow your own vegetables for your family, for your community. At its peak around, I think it was 1944, the Victory Garden movement was producing around 40% of the nation's produce.
I've actually seen the figure 44%.
44?
Yeah. I think I got that.
44% in 1944.
That makes sense,
okay.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I learned that from some of that, and I'm so glad that you had that connection to Victory Gardens. Then you must know that Lamanda Joy from the Peterson Garden Project is a huge fan of Victory Gardens,
Yeah.
and she set up this system in Chicago, one of the best community garden systems anywhere in the country, where she's got about 4,000 people volunteering or being part of it, and they find vacant lots and they set up plots and they get people to grow their own organically, and she does talks about the Victory Garden system and how important it was, and I have adopted that, and then when I do talks I say there's no reason we can't do this now. If we did this in World War II, and 44% of our fresh vegetables are grown in our own backyards, why can't we do this now?
Right. And we have a whole new set of challenges. Hopefully we're not going to have a world war anytime soon, but we don't need a world war to get this.
Don't even say that out loud, okay? Don't even go there.
Okay, yeah, we can rewind and take over that. But you know, with climate change becoming a more and more, you know, real and you know, on the ground issue. I mean, where you're seeing droughts in California, you're seeing all sorts of disruption to...
Well, you're seeing rain events here in the Midwest as well.
Mm-hmm.
Drought in California, but we get these rain events that used to be called once in 100-year events, and we're getting them 4 times a year.
Right.
It's amazing.
It requires that we start diversifying production and localizing production as much as we can. And so, you know, there are, you know, small scale, you know, community gardens, school gardens, residential growing projects that we're very much trying to encourage. But then there are a lot of other projects that are happening across the city and outside of the city too. I mean, we're not saying that all food should be grown in the cities, but you know.
But if you can grow it in the city, you can grow it anywhere.
Grow it, exactly. And you know, we're seeing people growing in warehouses where they're doing vertical farms, they're doing aquaponics, they're able to grow year round. You know, you have Gotham Greens that just set up shop in backyards, or Pullman I should say, where they're growing year round in greenhouses.
Mm-hmm.
And employing a lot of people. So we think that having a lot of different approaches, as long as they are, you know, following sustainable methods, you know, that's a really great way to make sure that we are dealing with a kind of an unpredictable, volatile sort of environment.
Mm-hmm.
If you have lots of different, it's kind of like, you know, if doing polyculture as opposed to monoculture. If you're growing one variety of one vegetable, you're going to be way more susceptible to a bad weather year, you know, a drought or a disease coming through a certain group of crops. But if you have a lot of different things, if you're diversifying your production, you have much less of a chance of, you know, catastrophic loss. And it's just all, you know, you might have loss in one group of crops, or you might, one model of growing might not end up working so well, but if you have a lot, you're in better shape.
Biodiversity is one of the keys. Billy Burdett, we didn't even have a chance to go into the Chicago weed law, but that doesn't have a whole lot to do.
It has everything, because that's, you know, biodiversity.
Well,
that's
it's true.
huge,
It's, you know,
right
in a nutshell, in like 10 seconds, the city of Chicago doesn't want you to grow native plants because they grow too tall and they consider them weeds, and we have to fight that kind of thinking, because then if you can't do that, then you can't grow vegetables in your front yard either. And a lot of cities, especially suburbs, have issues with that. So it is, as you say, it's all tied together. So Billy Burdett from the from Advocates for Urban Agriculture. If folks want more information, where do they go?
They go to auachicago.org, and that is our website, and you can connect with our Google group. It's got about 2,200 people on there. Connect with all sorts of resources like our Urban Agriculture Resource Guide and Chicago Urban Agriculture Mapping Project.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff at AUA. You can take advantage and apply, even if you don't live in Chicago, you can apply it to your own community, and I strongly urge you to go to auachicago.org. Okay, AUA Chicago, I mean, it pops up automatically on my computer, so I don't have to worry about that. Billy Burdett, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we will be back with more interviews. #FoodTank live streaming on Facebook.